All right, guys, we're back for another edition of the MAGA Media Podcast. I'm Andrew, and here with Rob, as always, and today we're joined by guest, NIT professor Joshua Spodek. How are you guys doing today?
Good. Very good.
Great. Well, we'll get right into things. The coronavirus is still running rampant across the country. We see a lot of people are now protesting to reopen the government, at least parts of it. A lot of businesses that are deemed unessential, people are arguing that they are essential. We've seen certain state governors like Georgia. I've seen that they're going to reopen bowling alleys and hair salons and whatnot, I believe, starting next week. And the beaches are open in Florida. First, we'll start with Rob. What do you think of the reopening, and how do you think it needs to be done? And what do you think of the governors that are going ahead and reopening things in certain states?
Well, I mean, my position is the same that I had last week when we spoke about this. Eventually, we have to open up. We have to reopen. We've got to get the engines running, got to get the wheels turning. I do believe that it has to be done in stages. We have to be careful. There's a part of me that says, hey, let's do it now. But I know that, this virus, not really understanding it completely, can very easily come back. So yes, it has to be done in stages. I get people are frustrated. They're ready to get out there. One of the things that I think we can't do is that we can't use New York as a template and compare that to all the other states and say, you guys have got to follow the same, opening as New York or California. The states that were hard hit, definitely, they need to be careful. But the other states, I mean, they should open with caution. That being said, Georgia has seen a peak in individuals that have been diagnosed with the virus or they're sick with the virus. So the governor is saying on Friday, we're going to open up the salons, the massage parlors, gyms and whatnot. What's interesting is that the massage parlors, is that a really big business in Georgia? I mean, I've got to contact a friend because when he said that, I'm thinking, of all businesses, why the massage parlors? But that being said, I know that the president said today that he spoke with the governor and that he mentioned to the governor that, he doesn't support the decision to open up the way the governor is planning on opening things up. He thinks that there should be stages. That being said, of course, the president said it's up to you. You're the governor. So that does give me reason to pause, because if things start to escalate and they're saying that they won't reach their peak, I think, until sometime next week, of course, this governor is going to catch hell. One more point before I stop is that I know a lot of people I've been seeing on social media, people are saying that, this is going to definitely affect black people, the barbershops and the salons that they're opening. Well, I've got news for you. There are other people other than black people that use these salons. That being said, this is their livelihood, and they want to get back to business. And if they open up, and if people don't come, that's on them. But if they do open up, and if people do decide to come, I would implore them to practice social distancing and come up with creative ways of cutting hair or doing whatever you do. As far as the massages, I don't know how they're going to handle that, but I guess there is a huge need to open up those parlors.
Right. Do you guys like the idea of statewide openings, or just opening in certain counties first? Like I've heard a lot of people say some counties have 0 cases still. Why can't they open up? I know New York's got a lot of counties that don't have nearly as many cases as New York City, obviously. Do you guys think that they should open up the counties first that have low cases, or should they just go by a state-by-state basis?
This is a really tough call. I mean, I agree with Rob. You have to balance keeping things shut down to contain the spread with people have to live their lives. And I mean, to me, also Sweden is a comparison because Sweden is doing it differently than everyone. But I think the culture, they will on their own practice social distancing because without a top-down requirement. But even still, I believe that among the comparable countries, the other Scandinavian countries, I think they're by far the fastest growing. And so that tells me look, I gotta say, like, I got a degree in science, but this is not my forte, and we don't really have much precedent to go with. We got 1918 flu, we got SARS and MERS, but there's really much more unknown than there is known. This is a really tough call. I mean, no one should be asking my opinion, there's people who, I've looked at some of the really interesting, when people run simulations of what happens when you start letting things out, and it's really very interesting, but it looks to me like we got a lot of growth left. That is to say that the virus is not done, and there can be other waves. But then if I solely look at it that way, then I can't help but conclude there's never a time until there's a vaccine to start loosening things, and that doesn't seem to work either.
Right.
And we can't go for like 80% getting it. I mean, that's a really dangerous thing to do too.
Right. But the other thing, if I can just jump in, is that there are, from what I'm hearing, there's a possibility that there are people that are walking around who are carriers and they don't know it. I could have it. I don't know it. I could have it. It doesn't knock me down. Whereas if I encounter someone else who has a weak immune system, they can get knocked down by it, So if we go with, as you said, or as you're saying on the outside, a lot of governors or people are saying, well, everyone needs to be tested. Well, that's not being realistic, because we know that that's not going to happen. And even if they had a test for everyone, there will be a huge pushback with people saying, no, I'm not going to take this test for the simple fact that you might be giving me something. Speaking as a black man in the black community, I know that there's going to be a lot of mistrust because of the 40-year or 50-year test that took place with the Tuskegee Airmen, whereby they gave black men syphilis, telling them they were testing something else. And I think that started in the 40s all the way up to the 70s. So the moment you introduce that to that population of people, they're going to say, there's no way I'm going to take it. Look at the flu shot now. The flu shot is available. And only a few people take it. I got mine this year, thankfully, but I had reservations about it. So waiting for testing when we know that, and you can't require people to take it. I know that, people are saying, oh, we need something, but people just aren't going to do it. So, and we can't keep the economy bind and thinking that the government can support all these people. It's impossible.
I noticed, caught my attention the other day, one of the protesters that are out protesting for the government to reopen claims that everybody's going to get the coronavirus, so they're better off just go ahead and getting it now. What do you think is wrong, if anything, with that line of thinking, Rob?
I initially, when I first heard about it back in December, I had said the same thing, that it's like the flu, and everyone's going to get it. And then as more data came in, I still held that belief that it's like the flu and that everyone will eventually get it. And now even more so, there's part of me that still thinks the same thing, because some scientists are saying that there are certain people who have agents in their body that will be able to fight off coronavirus, and they'll be able to survive it, whereas there are others who won't. I know that I was contacted not too long ago for me to come in and get plasma. I've given plasma before, something about my plasma, I guess. And they're like, hey, let's test your plasma, let's see. I'm like, how much is it going to cost? No, I was just kidding. But so I kind of think that is a that could conceivably happen, that everyone will get it, and only those that have compromised immune systems or respiratory systems will probably, it'll probably take them down. It's not to say that they can't come back. But this is definitely an area that we're completely, we just don't know anything about. And even the best scientists, look at the modeling that they had. They thought one thing because it was only as good as the information they were putting into the model, and then something completely different happened. Now, I know that some people are saying, well, the social distancing, that's what, brought it down. I'm kind of, I don't completely buy that. I think there's an unknown factor here that we don't know about, that eventually, probably years from now, we will find out, but I don't think the social distancing in itself helped to bring down the curve, and I don't know why. I just don't think that it did. So protesters saying that everyone's going to probably get it, we should just, I don't think it's avoidable. Yeah, we're social distancing, but at some point, I mean, there's going to be a crack. So, yeah, I mean, that could happen.
I don't think. I mean, I don't think it's necessary that everybody's going to get it. I think a lot of people get it, but I heard that maybe a third of people get it. And at first, I thought I'm not really that worried about it because I'm in pretty good shape and I don't have any. I mean, I'm 48, soon to be 49. That's not quite where it'd be really dangerous for me. But still, people get scarring in their lungs. I don't want that. So it's not just I don't want to take it as a given that I'm going to get it. From a leadership perspective, I think businesses, leaders of all sorts, have to make decisions when they don't have the data all the time. I think that what I do in a situation like that is to say, I try to be as transparent as I can, and to be I say, this is the information that I have. I'm counting on this. I'm discounting that. There's no right answer here, but a decision has to be made of some sort. And here's how I came to this. You may disagree with me, you may not. Here are the people who disagree. Here are the people who disagree. No one knows all the answers, and we're doing our best. And this is what we'll do going forward. And as information changes, then I may change as well. We may have to adjust there. I think it's the process and transparency, I think, is what I would go with. Knowing that I can't get it, there's no way that 350 million Americans are going to say, I agree with that solution.
Right.
But at least don't hold anything back. Don't try not to surprise as much. Modi did it in India. It was suddenly like he made a decision that could have been made earlier, and he suddenly just made this decision because suddenly everyone's caught. It may have been the right decision, but it just, the way it was done struck me as not effective leadership. And that's what we crave right now, I think, is when people are suffering, they want to know their suffering is not in vain, that there's a purpose to it, that there can be meaning made of it, to learn how to help others from it, for example.
Absolutely. China there's been a lot of talk from both sides. I think people are all over with this from what I've seen, whether or not that the virus was made in the Wuhan lab. I think everyone agrees on one thing, that it seems that bats were a contributing factor to the virus, but I've seen reports say that it's been proven that it wasn't made in the lab, and then we've got the Nobel Prize winner that discovered HIV say that it had to have been made in the lab based on what he's seen. Josh, as a scientist, what do you think of this argument, and do you lean one way or the other?
If you put animals close together, viruses will form, viruses will breed. And if you put them close together, and I don't mean close together like on a farm, like you think of you see in the movies of a couple cows here and there and a couple sheep here and there, but really packed in. And then you put other animals packed in close to that, then they will jump from one to the next and they'll start mutating. And that will reach us. And that is why for decades people have been saying it's not if, it's when. And if we continue to put animals close together, next to other animals close together, and if we continue to encroach into wildlife territory, whatever happens with this one, there will be more and more and more. And it will stop when we stop breeding the viruses. And so if it happened in this particular province or that particular province, it will happen again in other places where those conditions are happening. And to me, it's when there's sometimes you want to get to the root of the problem, but when the problem is, when your house is on fire, you have to work on the fire. And to me, how can we stop this from happening again? How can we right now there's practices that are breeding viruses and mutating viruses and coming to us, and those practices, I don't see virtually no one talking about them in the media, and that to me is the most important thing. Well, I mean, saving lives here now and stopping the spread. That's the here and now. But in terms of prevention in the future, that's what I look at.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Rob, do you think, based on what you've read, that it could be maybe an intentional disease or maybe they unintentionally spread it, but intentionally were messing around with it in the Wuhan lab, and that's how it got out?
My first thought would be that this was China's attempt to strike back at the entire trade war that could have ensued, or us having to pay tariffs. When I first learned of it, I thought in the back of my mind, China's won. They've won a war, and they haven't fired a shot. But they've won because look at what has happened to the economy, the global economy. And now they're trying to come out and say, oh, well, we're looking for a cure. We are sending everyone on all these ventilators, et cetera, et cetera. And then I calmed down and I said, okay, let's just look at this practically. Initially, they said, oh, it was a bat. And I'm like, possibly, from what I've heard. And then the whole thing with the experiments and the lab and whatnot, I mean, that seems more plausible. Was it done intentionally? Is anyone's guess? I could see the probability that, yep, that's possible. They probably did, knowing that China wants world dominance. I would like to think and hope that it wasn't done intentionally. But knowing what we know from China, and just speaking with some of my Chinese colleagues, who, from just speaking with them, associates, their whole thing is, don't trust China. Don't trust China. Not the Chinese people per se, but the government. And that's a big distinction that we have to make here. Because a lot of people are assuming that we're saying, oh, Chinese, you're doing this. No, we're not saying that. We're saying communist China, the government itself. So if I look at the government and then look at what happened, I'm inclined to say, yeah, it was intentional. What do they have to lose? They have a lot to gain. And the global community is yet to come out and say, China, what the heck? I mean, there are a few people here and there, Spain. They're like, oh yeah, we need to know what happened, and maybe they're waiting for the investigation so they can have enough information to go back and say, hey, this is what we found out, and this is what you have to do. But the longer they wait, the harder it becomes because China is extremely manipulative. And even if they did, what can we do? I mean, China is ingrained in just about everyone's economy in some shape, form, or fashion. So what would we do? We just take it standing up and say, okay, don't do it again? So is it a possibility? Yeah. Do I believe that it was intentional? Yeah. Until they show me otherwise.
Yes, we touched on it a little bit last time, but President Trump has cut the funding to the World Health Organization for the time being. We talked about the things that they've been off on. I watched a TV, or I didn't watch it, but I seen it was on a TV special last week. There was a bunch of celebrities like Lady Gaga and whatnot. They did a charity concert for the World Health Organization to raise money for them. Do you guys think that the World Health Organization has lost any credibility through this coronavirus pandemic thus far?
My understanding is that they can only channel information that they get from other places, and the other places, if they get faulty information, all they can do is pass on faulty information. But the United States has plenty of resources to get its own information. Its credibility, I don't think so. I mean certainly there are going to be some people for whom it has, and some people for whom it's been strengthened.
I, for one, will say that they've lost all credibility with me. They have lost all credibility. Just looking at the leadership, looking at their past actions, looking at some of the things that were done, I don't see the benefit of having the World Health Organization to tell me or to tell anyone that, hey, this is what's happening. Look at how they treated Ebola. Look at how they did MERS. Look at how they did SARS, H1N1. And then you look at the guy who's there, who's leading it right now. I mean, yes, they can only go with the information that they're given. But, I mean, a lot of times you got to step back and say, wait a minute. I mean, you guys are constantly having problems. And then when you come to us, you're constantly saying, oh, but we make good on it, when it doesn't seem that way. And then the guy who's at the top, he seems to be political. And then just looking at his background, I would encourage all of our readers, look into this guy's background. I mean, yeah, he's a doctor, but I don't know if he should have that position. I don't know if he's a lackey for China. He was handpicked from Ethiopia. And if I might add, China has gone in and given Ethiopia all these loans to help prop up their economy. So there's no way someone from Ethiopia is going to come out and speak out against China. So I have problems with that. So as far as credibility for me, they have absolutely zero credibility. I don't know why we need them. And the people who are saying, oh, but we need to fund them, please, come on. Mike Bloomberg, you're a billionaire. Fund them yourself. Bill Gates, why don't you fund them? Why do we have to fund them? And what are we getting in return? The only thing we're getting in return is a spit in the face. I don't trust people like this. I mean, to me, it just, like, I just, no. When you've shown me once that you can't get it right, then a second time, and a third time, and now he come out and said, hey, we're going to look at this because I'm concerned also as to what China is telling me, considering the things that have happened in the past. But to come out so defensively and to protect them almost, and then to shy the United States and saying, oh, you don't want to go there, you don't want to do this. I'm like, okay, so what is he telling us? So for me, my point of view, no, don't trust them. Stop funding them. I don't see what they're bringing to the table. If they want to stay at the UN, that's fine. But as far as the United States, no, keep our money at home. We could use our money to create our own health organization and to look after our own people and our own interest.
Yeah, it almost seems like, to me at least, it seems like the World Health Organization's a good idea in thought and practice, but it's almost like the UN. Anytime you have so many countries participating and donating to it, there's always going to be a lot of finger pointing and blame to pass around when situations like this occur.
And why won't they allow Taiwan to enter into become a member of the World Health Organization? I mean, I have an issue with that. I mean, could it be that China wants to take over Taiwan so they won't well, we know that China does not recognize Taiwan as a country, independent country. Is that the reason why they don't want Taiwan? And Taiwan was one of the countries that was warning everyone, be careful, be careful, be careful. And now it's almost, and the guy who's second in command of the World Health Organization, I think is an American, and another guy is a Briton. And both of them, they just dismissed Taiwan, what Taiwan was saying. So I've got an issue with that. And it's extremely troubling for me.
Absolutely. Did you guys see that Harvard University got lots of money from the last stimulus package? The number is not in front of me right now, but I've seen people have been passing around the number that Harvard's got $40 billion. They're worth $40 billion, so they're saying that they don't need the money. Of course, they fired back and said that the money was being used for the students who need it the most. What did you make of the controversy of Harvard receiving so much grant money?
I think it's 8.7 million I'm looking at in federal aid after Trump cites endowment. They need to give the money back, just like Shake Shack did. But one thing I want to point out to our listeners and viewers about the stimulus money and the people who got it. Now, I don't know if this is in Harvard's case, and this is not a defense for Harvard. I definitely think Harvard should give the money back. But what people need to realize is that on the financial side, me coming from the financial world, is whenever money or these types of programs are created, they say, hey, we're going to give the money to these banks, and they're going to distribute the money, et cetera, et cetera. What banks have to do is they have to come up with a system whereby they can do checks and balances on the money so that they can report back to the government. These are the people that we gave the money to. Okay. In addition to that, there's something known as know your client. They also have to know who the clients are. And if you're already a client of these institutions, it's going to make it a lot easier for them to come in and apply for the money and them to approve it, and they get the money. Whereas if you have a mom and pop store who's probably banking with a small retail bank, they don't have all of the technology that these larger institutions have. Okay, and the same with the community bank. So if you are a customer of the community bank, they know who you are, they've done their KYC, and that is the law. They want to make certain that the money isn't going to an institution that supports terrorism or is money laundering. So when you have these large institutions that are coming in, let's say like a Harvard, and they apply for it, these banks are going to say, hey, you are approved because we have all your paperwork. And the other thing is these institutions have to do periodic reviews on a lot of these companies. So they'll know immediately, hey, there are no red flags here. We know who's on the board. We know where the money comes from. So it's a lot easier for them to get the money as opposed to Joe Diamond, who comes in, has about 500 plus employees, but they don't have a track record as to who they are, who their clients are, who they do business with, and that's a requirement of the federal government to know your client. So they might have 500 employees, but then the institutions have to know, okay, who are your clients and who are their clients? So it keeps trickling down. So by the time these companies come in with all the information, all the money is gone. And they've given the money to those institutions that they know. So not saying that it's right or wrong, but that's just the way the system is set up. And I think that Mnuchin, whom I think is a very smart, intelligent man, he should have done a better job, I think, and just explain, hey, this is what happened. When those institutions came in and they applied for the money, the banks more than likely knew who they were and they had their paperwork in place. Whereas Joe Diamond is coming in, he's never done this before. He's never had to get all the paperwork before. So he did it. It took a lot longer to approve him than it did for a company like Harvard. I mean, a school like Harvard. That being said, Harvard should definitely give the money back. Now, I also heard that when all this started taking place, Harvard laid off a majority of its cafeteria workers and said, oh, well, we can't pay you. Now, I mean, Harvard has like $1 billion endowment, and you can't pay these individuals. It's like, are you serious? I mean, that's where, I mean, this is when we need to come together as a nation. When I see small businesses who don't have a lot of money, and then they're telling their employees that we're going to try to keep you on as long as possible because this was no fault of yours, no fault of ours, and we're going to try to keep paying you. But then when you have an institution like Harvard or these other huge companies that are laying people off because they're thinking, well, the government's going to take care of it. The federal government's going to take care of you. You can get unemployment, or they're going to give you a stimulus. I'm like, no. And then these same companies are giving their CEOs these huge bonuses.